welcome back to the Morning Brew right here on CNC3. Now, today is United Nations World Youth Skills Day. It was designed to recognize the fact that if young people acquire skills, it helps them make better decisions when they actually enter the labor market. Of course, this year, 2021, because we're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, the focus is on developing skills post-pandemic, or getting our youth ready for a post-pandemic world. So we're being joined by Renee Atwell. Renee Atwell is a Trinidad and Tobago Youth Ambassador for Caricom. And we also have Lawrence Arjoon, who is the CEO of the Heroes Foundation. The Heroes Foundation is a youth development NGO based in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you so much for the both of you for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to start with Renee. I feel as though Trinidad and Tobago, our education system, for better or for worse, is very much focused on exams. And even before we get to exam mode, our young people are encouraged to consider what it is they want to be, and then select the subjects that help them get into that particular area. Do you think, though, that is the right way to go about getting our young people ready for the world of work, especially now that COVID-19 has changed our focus and our understanding of what the world is, and it has changed normal?
I think the conversation about equipping young persons with skills is particularly important in the context as we aim to transition out of the global pandemic. And that is because through our formal education system, you hear a lot of young persons complaining that they are not equipped with the skills needed to enter into the workplace or even to enter into self-employment. The focus within the region largely is on formal careers, so young persons are pushed to go into areas of accounting, law, business, etc., but not much emphasis is placed on the technical and vocational field. And as a result of that, what you might see is that young persons come out of school, yes, they have their formal passes or their qualifications, but they lack in practical skills that may be needed in the workplace, or also to equip them with skills needed to start a business or to enter into entrepreneurship. So I definitely think that in our education system, more emphasis should be placed in equipping young persons with skills that they may need to help them, achieve economic empowerment, and also to be able to transition into the workplace or start their own businesses.
Lawrence, I wanted to bring you into the conversation. I feel as though because of your vantage point at the Heroes Foundation, and you'll work so closely with young people, you'll get to do what you'll do in practice, what we pay lip service to, which is engage with young people at every level and allow them to have a say in the programs that you'll deliver. Are we doing enough already in Trinidad and Tobago to get our young people prepared for the world of work in a holistic fashion, or should we be doing more?
Thank you for that question, Soyini. And I really want to build on what Renee just said there. I mean, I love the data, and the data says, the data put forward by the Caribbean Development Bank and UNICEF both say that 15% of the Eastern Caribbean area population is unemployed, and the youth unemployment rate is twice as high as the traditional unemployment rate. And when we look at the skills that are needed, one of the key points coming out from the Caribbean Development Bank is that any sort of youth development intervention must be looking at the integration of social and emotional skills such as self-control, conflict resolution, positive self-acceptance, which are very key to youth development. Now, looking at education is a very, very broad concept. There's academic education, which is needed, absolutely important, but it really is the smallest part of education when you look at what are those skills needed for this evolving world of work that we are in. And everything that we do at Heroes comes back to Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child, where children have the right to give their opinions and be taken seriously when important decisions are being made about their life. And that is what I think we need to be doing more of in everything related to education and development, because they are living it. They are connected to the world. They are connected to the internet way more than any of us who've gone before them. And they know the realities that they are facing. So when we look at the development of young people, when we look at what is happening in this world, I mean, I remember distinctly 2 years ago when I came across at Heroes, when I was talking about digitization, a lot of people in the country were saying that, well, you know, we're not ready to digitize, we're not ready to transition to digital, it's going to be problematic. And then came COVID. And COVID forced everybody to digitize. So how do we now incorporate into our education system, our development system? CSOs play a huge part in supporting that development system. How do we incorporate those skills to develop those resilience of young people, help young people understand themselves, who they are, their skills, their ability, how do they adapt to change? How do they understand their emotions, their feelings, be able to communicate that? Those are these kind of important skill sets that come not from the academic part of the education system, but from the extracurriculars, from the activities that they get involved with CSOs in their communities, from the sports, from the arts and the culture. Now, everything is a science. As far as I'm concerned, every single thing is a science. The more complicated ones, they call it art. Youth development is a science. And when we look at all the different things that need to go into developing these young people to equip them for the future, I think it's really important that if one thing comes out of this, that everybody involved in education and development work tries to be the person that they needed when they were younger.
I think that's actually very, very good advice for life. Renee, you just heard Lawrence say that we have a lot of children, young people in the Eastern Caribbean who are out of work, and that we haven't paid sufficient attention to their social skills. Now, we also heard him talk about, you know, his love of data. I feel as though we have a lot of data in the Caribbean. We have a lot of policies. We do that a lot. So we know what the problem is, and we know we have the theories to how to solve those problems. Where we fall down is implementation. How do we put promise into practice?
Well, definitely when it comes to young persons, I think consulting with youth is very important.
How do we consult better? Because we know we're supposed to, but I feel as though we don't do it in a real way.
Yes. And that is true because, of course, you have that whole aspect of youth tokenism, where sometimes you reach out to one or two young persons and get their perspective on what could be done. But I think where, you know, both the public and private sector can do better when it comes to developing programs for young persons is by consulting, for example, the national youth councils in respective Caribbean countries. National youth councils are really supposed to be that body that represents the voice of young persons. I know in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a Trinidad Youth Council and we have a Tobago Youth Council as well. Those are two very important bodies where their membership consists of youth groups throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And so they would have that perspective of the young person on the street who probably graduated and can't get a job, or that young entrepreneur who may be wanting access to finance and they need that knowledge on budget creation, of money management, for example. So consulting young persons, I think, is extremely important, and having the perspective of youth when it comes to developing programs and the implementation of programs. Proper project management is also of extreme importance. Because, of course, when it comes to managing a project, young persons should be involved in the planning of the project, the execution, but also the monitoring and evaluation after the project has been put in place. So I think when it comes to that implementation gap, which we often see quite throughout the region, allowing young persons to be involved in every step of the process in projects that touch and concern them, I think will assist greatly, because, you know, you would have these stakeholders who are involved in the project. They have a say, and of course they are interested in the outcome. So they would be very much involved and assist in the successful execution of these projects that can actually uplift our region's young persons.
I was thinking, as you were talking to me, Renee, it would be really interesting to see more youth-led initiatives from a senior level. I mean, I know I was reading something a few weeks ago, and they were talking about, you know, don't be afraid to have a mentor that's younger than you, especially as we are being introduced to technologies that we are just simply, you know, some persons or some age groups are just simply not as au courant with. Lawrence, jumping off from what Renee said, I feel as though Heroes has done quite a good job of being innovative and actually listening to young people. Can you speak to the benefits of being an organization that works with young people but also very much listens to them and is directed by their advice and their needs?
Very, 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 very happy to answer that. I'm loving this conversation because I really love the contributions that Renee is bringing, because it all adds up. It really does all add up. So we work with kids, with youth 8 to 18 through different programs. What we do is really focus on delivering leadership development and mentorship programs. So I'm really happy that you spoke about mentorship as well. And it's about helping them to develop those psychosocial and educational needs to sustainably transition into that evolving world and to meaningfully contribute to what is happening. And the Big Brothers Big Sisters of Trinidad and Tobago mentorship program that we deliver speaks exactly to that, about how the power of that mentorship relationship. Because what we've seen, I was a big myself in the program 7 years ago, and what we've seen is those mentorship relations work both ways, where the adult mentor, the big, in their in how they engage with that young people, how that young person, how they're guided by the program case officers, also learns from that young person, because young people see the world very differently, and it's a very important skill set. Now, I've not been in youth development work all my life. I come from the energy sector. I'm very lucky to have seen in the energy sector a Trinity exploration where I was in a de novo, that matching of young, bright professionals with older experts, potential, possibly people who have retired as well, because that's how you innovate in any sort of sector. That's how you really go beyond where you are at. And what we're trying to do very much at Heroes is do that, to bring these young people into the decision making when it comes to program delivery, but get them involved in leading on activities, working with people on delivering events. And we have a few events coming up in August. We've used the youth advisory teams for program advisory before. Today, actually, this afternoon, we're having our first official Youth Advisory Committee meeting, where we are going to have a Youth Advisory Committee advising the organization, advising me directly as the CEO on that high-level strategic forefront on what we are doing, because we see the need for that, and that's where you bring the real change. You get those young voices involved, connect them to people who are a little wiser, who know a little more from their experiences, and you go about changing the world. It's going to be hard work, but that's how you go about changing the world.
Renee, apparently we need to be listening to young people more often. What advice do you give to our government, to our Ministry of Youth Development, in terms of how they can tap into the resource, the valuable resource that our young people are, if we want to make Trinidad and Tobago a better place?
Well, I know I work very closely with the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service as a Caricom Youth Ambassador, and I know that the ministry is engaged in heavy consultation with youth. So I would just encourage the ministry to continue consulting with young persons for all of its projects, because youth have that perspective. We know what we want. We know what we need as young persons to, to operate better in society, to be more productive. And as a result, I would encourage the ministry to have young persons' voices heard. I know that we've had many issues when it comes to the delivery of both educational and technical and vocational skills programs as we experienced the pandemic, because not much of our programs were digitized. I think the ILO actually did a study on Caricom member states in terms of how they were able to adapt their programs to the pandemic, and they found that over 50% of programs were not able to be continued because there was no ICT being utilized. So if young persons are involved in the process, things like this would not happen, because we would have the perspective that, listen, young people are now, we have devices, there are still persons who may not have access to devices, but those things can always be remedied. You know what I mean? So having the perspective of young persons are extremely important, and the ministry should continue to do that. Engage in public consultations. You have town hall events virtual where you could engage in young persons, ask them, what do you need training in? How could we better serve you as a ministry? Because of course, if you are creating programs in isolation without consulting young persons, then you would not have very successful programs. So youth consultation is extremely important, and of course the incorporation of ICT in youth programs would also assist greatly in reaching young persons and ensuring that we are able to equip them to operate more efficiently and productively in society.
Renee Atwell, Caricom Youth Ambassador, and Lawrence Arjoon, CEO of the Heroes Foundation. Thank you so much for such an enlightening conversation to start off our program. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
We are going to take a very quick break and come back with a little bit more right after this.